We all know that the most stalwart brand stories are experienced through your colleagues and your customers. Their experience hopefully embodies what your brand is all about as a business. And then they consistently share your stories about that experience with the world. But what happens when you can't achieve the consistency you need with your brand story because of external forces like COVID? Your customers are sequestered to their homes. Colleagues become virtual employees. What then?
How do we keep the brand fresh? How do we keep our storytelling fresh? Because we work for a visionary leader and an entrepreneur, we're moving. We're moving fast. Ideas come, we create campaigns, and we move. And the one thing that I believe that is really interesting is that the brand that we've helped develop for GCU, it's locked in. It's a solid brand, but it needs to move and shake differently as time goes on. And the brand evolves through our students. I mean, they are the face of the brand.
Chad Wilson is Vice President, Executive Creative Director, Marketing at Grand Canyon Education, Inc., a shared services partner dedicated to serving colleges and universities with a team that has been leading educational transformation since 1983. As part of his work at GCE, Chad has directed the brand story transformation of Grand Canyon University, Arizona's premier Christian university committed to making a private education affordable for all. Grand Canyon University has gone through a resurrection of sorts from a struggling institution to one of the fastest growing universities in the country, thanks in part to not only a visionary leader, but the brand storytelling work of Chad and his team. Chad is an experienced executive creative director skilled in branding, consumer research, strategy, media, advertising, and integrated marketing. He has an MBA in business administration and management from Grand Canyon University and is with us for a special deck dialogue from our home up here in Munns Park, Arizona, to share with you the evolution of the GCU story and how you can grow your impact too. Please welcome to the Business of Story, Chad Wilson. Chad, welcome to my deck.
Thank you. This is beautiful. This is quite amazing. Deck Dialogues is no joke. This view is spectacular.
Oh, thanks. Well, you took the time to come up from Phoenix today. I really appreciate that because I love doing these interviews in person. You know, most all of my interviews are done around the world, which is cool because I get to meet so many really great people, but there are so many incredible professionals here in Arizona that when I can sit down with them like you, it's just so much better.
Yeah.
So welcome.
Thank you.
You came up and the traffic wasn't too bad. So
traffic wasn't bad at all. No.
And folks, he showed up in his T-shirt, and we all do this. Having lived in Phoenix for 3 decades of my life, you forget it's actually cool in other places. And up here in northern Arizona, I think it was about 61 degrees when he showed up, and it was kind of cold.
Yeah. And Park hooked me up with a nice light jacket, so I'm good now.
You're good. God bless Patagonia. Huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks so much for coming up the hill. You have got a great background in advertising, working with agencies on the account side, on the creative side. You worked with some of the top shops in town, Louis Moses Anchel. I guess it wasn't Anchel at the time when you were over there. One of the top creatives. When I first moved here back in 1985, Louis was, one of those icons that you looked after, and you worked for him for quite a while. But now you're over at Grand Canyon Education, and you've been there for a while, so it's not like just now, but you are running a very large team and have helped bring a university, a private Christian university that was really not much, about 10 years ago, into one of the top universities, certainly in the Southwest, if not in the nation.
Yeah, before I get into that, I just wanted to hook on to what you said about Louis. Louis is great.
Yeah.
He was a great mentor. I think mentorship in this business is huge. And he was so gracious for so many of us all that worked with him, alongside him. And I'm glad you mentioned him. He's a great guy. So yeah, regarding the private Christian university, Park, Grand Canyon University, about 13 years ago, the story goes that President Mueller and his team came in and had a vision to really grow that university into what it is today. And it is the largest and fastest private Christian university in the country.
And we should explain quickly, if you would, where it's located here in Arizona.
So it's located in West Phoenix, and it's if you're familiar with the footprint of Phoenix, it's off of I-17 and Camelback, and it's an inner city. And when the group came to execute their vision, there was a lot of crime and poverty and a lot of things in the area. So one of the goals was to bring capital to the campus and build that out for the university. But what impact can that have in the community? So there was a 5-point plan developed by, again, President Mueller and his team, and that very quickly was to bring market value to the homes around there, and they did that through a partnership with Habitat for Humanity. They have a partnership with Phoenix Police to really eradicate and change the crime footprint in the area, and there's been a lot of success there. Crime's down, pretty significant numbers, violent crime and that type of thing, and it's changed dramatically. The other component to their 5-point plan really was to pour into the community through opportunities, through businesses and these different enterprises that are spun off from different areas of the university. So there's a GCU hotel, there's a GCU golf course, there's a beverage company, there's an ad agency that kind of rolls up into the area that we work at on my team. A couple other things, and what that offers the community is community members can work for GCU. And not only do they get a living salary, their kids can go to school there for little to no tuition, which can change the family tree dramatically moving forward. It's a fantastic example of really being a servant leader, but also understanding what conscious capitalism is and how you can really bring prosperity and show community members what it's like to work and earn an income and have education and just have the opportunities that this great country is founded upon. And it's been a blessing to just be a part of that vision and offer up any services that I can as a creative marketing professional, and to see the growth. It's been spectacular.
And there was a university there before, a small campus there before of a very struggling unit school. And maybe that school was even out of business at that point when they took it over, but I know it was on life support at best. Yeah,
basically it was struggling. It was almost considering some bankruptcy. Luckily that didn't happen. They were able to take their idea to the market and do a public offering. So they basically took Grand Canyon University and turned it into a for-profit university to generate income or generate capital to build it out and grow it. And that model really proved to be a success. They were able to bring, just after a couple of years of that IPO, bring in, I believe, $250 million of capital. They were able to start building out the campus, build out the technology infrastructure to build online course offerings for, working business folks in the healthcare community, education, kind of primary programs that the university offers, and put that online and have that online campus grow throughout the country. And they leveraged the ground campus in Phoenix, and that online campus leveraged the same infrastructure. And there's a lot of efficiencies that came out of that. And from there, the growth has just been exponential. There's about 24,000 students currently on campus. When Mueller and his team came over, there was, I believe, roughly 900 students on campus. There's 24,000 now. Our current online numbers, I believe, are in the 95,000. So collectively, the student body for GCU across the nation is 115,000. It's a huge growth since 2008, and it's been fantastic. And a couple of years ago, the Grand Canyon Education Service Company remained the publicly traded company, and GCU returned to its nonprofit.
The university went back to nonprofit. You work for the for-profit overall.
Yeah, I work for the Education Services Company, which is a for-profit publicly traded company.
And they've done this rather quickly. I used to go out and play the Maryvale golf course a lot with my buddies on Sunday mornings. And Maryvale is a really pretty rugged part of the valley. And that golf course was a rugged part of the valley, so much so that you would go into the 19th hole cafe, and they had a big sign there with a revolver and the red swash through it. It said, "No firearms in the cafe." And I'm like, who puts no firearm signs at a public golf course and cafe? Well, you do out here in Maryvale. But Grand Canyon then came in, took over management of that course, remodeled it. They have a gorgeous pro shop, country club type restaurant there. It's where the kids go out, the team plays, and yet it's still open to all of us. And they don't charge an arm and a leg to go and play it. So anybody can, with a decent wherewithal can go and play it. And to me, that was just a little microcosm of the kind of impact that they've made throughout Maryvale and Southwest Phoenix down there.
Yeah, it's been tremendous. That if you're golfers out there and you want to go out there and check it out, it's a woodlands type course, great greens, 7,200 yards for the full course, and it's challenging.
Yeah,
it's a great track.
Well, okay, so we've sold GCU pretty good right up here. Let's talk about you and the work you do there. I had the privilege of working with you and about 100 of your folks a couple years ago, working through storytelling and teaching that and whatever. But you've got quite a storied career in advertising, highs and lows like everybody. But now as Vice President and Executive Creative Director out at Grand Canyon Education, you are overseeing this very large crowd and basically the storytelling at GCU.
Correct. Yeah. The history of how I got to where I am today, frankly, it's built in pure drive, really. I started out in advertising and marketing going back to working for my dad's ad agency when I was in high school.
And where was that?
Albuquerque, New Mexico. His agency primarily focused on automobile advertising and a lot of local dealers. And then that grew to regional work. And then ultimately, I think he had at one point national GMC truck, and he ended up selling to NW Air in the late 90s and whatnot.
So he did pretty well for himself.
Yeah, he did pretty good. And he always told me, he's like, when you get into college, what do you want to do? And I would say, I kind of want to get into marketing advertising. He's like, no, you don't. You don't want to do that. So I listened to him, and here I am,
All of us push our kids away from this line of work. You don't want to do this.
But anyways, so I remember working there as kind of a gopher, they called me, like helping the creative department, help running tapes to the production house or go do whatever. So I learned a lot about the creative process back in the day, where you actually had to do a paste up mechanical where they're bringing content to you and they're pasting it up on a sheet, and then you take the sheet and then you go put it into the dark room and you shoot it, and then you bring it back to the art director and they're like, we got to make these adjustments, and they got to reset type. It's a lot different than today's computer technology.
We used to have to send out to Technoprint.
Yeah.
So we would mock up the ad. The art director would kind of guess at the typeface and size and whatever, order it up from Technoprint. It'd take them 24 hours to print it. They would send it over. Then they'd take the razor out, cut it up, paste it down. I mean, doesn't it seem just so antiquated compared to what we're doing today?
It's crazy. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Even going into the editing rooms back there, they have the whole bank with all the computer or the keyboards and all this stuff and the tape machines in the back going zzz, and all that stuff. And then now it's completely different. But, so I always kind of had a drive to be in the creative side of it. But when I graduated college, I just wanted to get my foot in the door at an agency. And I did. But I started out on the account side.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to undergrad at ASU and then my master's through GCU.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I cut my teeth from when I got out of school on the account side, which was interesting because I learned a lot of the business side of it, a lot of the media side of it, a lot of the strategy side of it. Not to say that creative doesn't have those things. Of course it does. But I just wasn't in the creative department as I first started out. And frankly, over the next 8 or 9 years, maybe even a little more than that, I stayed in that kind of role. But I learned a ton. And I always found myself bridging the gap in the agencies I worked at with the creative team. I found myself more of a kindred spirit with them. And even when I worked for Louis, we mentioned Louis earlier, and I think he knew that about me, and he gave me a lot of grace to work very closely with the creative teams, which I thought were cool, or was very cool of him. And when Grand Canyon University was the agency of record, Moses was the agency of record at the time for Grand Canyon, I was on that account and worked hand in hand with the full creative team, and Louis, of course, developing the campaign that we launched for Grand Canyon, which was the Find Your Purpose campaign, and we're still using Find Your Purpose as our positioning today. And I'm very proud to be a part of that. And there was an opportunity for me to come over to the client side as the creative director. And frankly, at that time, when I was looking at the job description for that position, it was everything that I was doing at Moses, but I would be doing it directly for them. So it was a great opportunity. I made that transition over in 2014 and have been there since. And it's been remarkable, and getting to really develop creative department and develop different creatives through the art side, the writing side, and the multimedia production side has been really, really awesome. There's so many great people that we have on the team. And not only just in the creative department, we have a brand unit team that's in my group that really helps with creative strategy for the creative development. Traditionally, the brand team or the creative strategy or the strategists are in a different department, and then they provide the creative brief documents to us, even though they would collaborate with creative people to develop them. That's in my department. So we kind of control that a little bit, which is neat. It's been remarkable to be able to just see this thing grow and grow the creative team out the way that we've done. And we do work that is national footprint work, all the way down to 6-second little bumper ads for whatever, you know.
Mm-hmm. Is there in your work, working with your dad, going to school, going through the different agencies that you worked at, landing over at Grand Canyon, is there one theme or one thing you want our listeners to take away that you think success is really built on in telling that story?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, that comes down to just one simple word, and that's just being proactive. It may sound simple and trite, perhaps, to some of the listeners out there, but if you're not being proactive with everything that you do and being intentional, you're missing out on so many opportunities, especially in this day and age with the way that communication is handled through all of these different platforms. It's unbelievable the amount of information that we have on any consumer set, any targeting parameters that we have. We can really uncover so much consumer information that can really drive opportunities to create campaigns that can do whatever it is that you need to do. Have more students, or buy more beer, or buy whatever it is. Like, there's so much information. If you're proactive, you can really define some strategies that will allow you to do excellent work that will impact the audience that you're going after, so that they make that decision for your product that you're marketing to. And without being proactive, this is where you get the passivity. And you get to see where, that brand did X. Oh, we should have done that. Well, you're not being proactive enough,
I was going to say, how do you define being proactive? Because it seems like that's just a given. If you're good at what you do, you're going to be proactive, but that's not always the case.
Yeah, being proactive, that's a great question, Park. It comes in many different shades, I should say. For us, we're grinders. We're just constantly grinding, and we believe in putting out content, not just content for content's sake, but smart, strategic content. So when you look at the marketing funnel, there's a lot of opportunity within that. Even if you just take the top funnel, which is traditionally just awareness and emotional kind of messaging that can connect with your heart or the consumer's heart. Well, within that stratosphere of the top funnel, you can really, really define interesting ways to share many different brand stories.
Isn't everything a commodity these days, because consumers live in this land of abundance? They can go anywhere and buy anything at any time.
Yeah, absolutely. So having a brand that means something to somebody, even just a little bit more than a competitor, is a huge win. So when you're looking at the sea of sameness within your industry, everything kind of sounds similar. Everything kind of looks similar. You hear often in the industry, well, you could take the logo off of that and put your logo on there and nobody would know the difference. Well, okay, we understand that, but how can you really stand out? So one campaign that we did a couple of years ago that I think was a proactive situation, but it was using an insight, and a very basic insight, that when somebody stepped foot on the campus of Grand Canyon University that hadn't been there before, they immediately felt this overabundance of welcoming joy and like open arm perspective.
From who?
From staff, from students, from faculty. Really, it didn't matter. But once the person was on and engaging with those folks on the campus, 100% of the time it felt like they would leave and say, that was one of the most unique experiences I've ever had. I never thought it would be that way. For whatever reason, they had a preconceived notion or whatever. Maybe it was a Christian university thing. I understand what a Christian university is, and when they got to GCU, it just felt different for whatever reason, or what, who knows? But they would always say that culture and that community at GCU is super remarkable. And I remember hearing that many, many times over a period of time from our president. And I got to thinking about it, and I had this idea to create this campaign that's called The Thunder in All of Us. So just to kind of give a little bit more clarity to that, Thunder is our mascot, and our positioning statement is Find Your Purpose. So I thought, well, if our mascot is Thunder, and there's kind of it's an interesting word. There's a lot that goes on with the word thunder. And our mascot is an antelope, and antelopes run. They stampede, and they do all of these things. So that's kind of where the thunder came from. But I thought, well, if our positioning line is purpose, and there's this overwhelming sense of welcoming culture, how can I bring this idea of thunder equals passion or purpose? So one way I thought to do that was to take the mascot kind of structure and break that down into the actual individuals that make up what GCU is. So that's online students, that's traditional campus students, that's the faculty, that's the staff, it's everybody. So they all have different stories to tell. And it's the community feeling that they all bring to the party. So how do we do that in a unique way that stands out from the rest of the competitor set, which is virtually every university, right? We all have STEM programs. We all have business programs. We all have all of these programs, and we're all kind of saying the same thing. The other thing is that universities all have their unique clock towers. They all have water features. They all have beautiful rolling hill campuses. Arenas. They have amazing buildings. They have you look at all the different aerial footage from all of these different universities. It's great. But how do we stand out? How do we showcase this unique insight that I was describing to you? So what we did was we wrote this really kind of multi-hero story based on the hero's journey. And we basically took that construct and went from character to character that we featured within there. And I think there was like 16 different characters, I believe, in the 4-minute long form video that we produced.
And you did that video about 3 years ago, about the same time we were doing the story training, because I remember you were in the throes of production.
Yeah, we were in the throes of production at that point in time. Yeah. It also doesn't look and feel like a traditional university marketing message. It had a lot of fun in it. It had a lot of special effects in it. It was kind of like a fantastical journey. And what it did was it took the idea of what makes these different characters that you could actually meet on campus by just being a student or one of the professors or one of the staff folks or different athletes that we featured within there. Like, what would make them feel on a video screen come to life more? So we cranked up the volume a little bit on pushing the envelope with some of the deliveries of the actors and some of the other people that we featured. But it's a wild ride, and we covered off on a lot of the tenets of the brand within it, and we made it fun and engaging. And when it came out, it was like, I think at the time, it probably still is one of the more unique higher education pieces of branded content that I've seen out there.
And it's still on YouTube.
It's still on YouTube.
We'll put it in the show notes so listeners can go and pull that up and take a look at it. Yeah. Makes me think, I know when it came out because I remember you were telling me about this production. I go, wow, that is ambitious. Can they pull it off? Because it sounds good. You know how it is in creating something. It sounds good, looks good in your mind's eye, and then you get into production, and quite often they'll fall flat. That piece was really powerful. I think of your billboard up on Camelback and 40th Street, and you guys own the corner right there. That billboard, you must have 12 different people on that in all different sizes and shapes, the diversity of it, but you also really accentuate the colors of purple and white, red and orange to make that pop. But when you go by it, it's not like any billboard you typically see for higher ed.
Yeah.
It's really about the people, and I think it gives you that sense of this emotion and this energy that you're pushing out there through basically a billboard. It's one thing to do it and pull it off in video, but to pull it off on the side of a street is pretty amazing.
Yeah, that work is really great. We have a photo illustrator that we work with who's done that for us, and he took basically the brief, and the brief was, GCU is a vibrant place. We have a lot to show. We have a ton to put in there. It's in Phoenix. Phoenix is amazing. It's Camelback Mountain. It has a great, city skyline. The sunsets are amazing. Palm trees, all of the things that we love about living in Arizona. And GCU's in the heart of Phoenix, and we want to feature faith. We want to feature somebody from the business school, from nursing, X, Y, and Z. So yeah, we have how are you going to do that in a static thing? Well, through that photo illustrative work, we were able to find that right thing and put that out there, and it's been impactful. Yeah.
Chad, have you had a time in your life and your career that was this idea of being proactive was very underscored to you? Maybe it was a time when you should have been more proactive, or when it's bit you in the butt and you said, you know what, there's a little secret to life right there.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of putting yourself through hard times and coming through them. And sometimes you can do that to yourself, and that's great. But when it happens to you unexpectedly, you learn really hard, really quick. And one of those examples I would like to share is earlier in my career, my first job out of college, I was working at another agency in town and really enjoyed it. But again, kind of relating back to what I said before, I always was kindred spirits in the creative world. So I quickly befriended the creative team.
Were you a designer or a writer? Did you feel like it? For me, I was definitely a writer. I did everything like you said, account service, media planning, buying and all that, but I was a writer at heart.
Yeah, more so writing.
Yeah.
Most of my creative is coming from the writing perspective.
So you're working for this big agency in town. Name will go unsaid. I know who you're talking about. They're still very big in town.
Yeah,
and so
great.
what happened?
So I was let go. I was let go after, I believe, almost 3 years of working there. I worked on one of the largest accounts that they had at the time, which was also great. I got to learn a lot. Tons of different media within their mix. So really, it was really great. And I think if I was to ask what was it that triggered it, I think I would say I remember writing an email about one of the projects we were working on for this brand we had, and I wrote an email about branding. And as kind of a young account person, getting for more tenured folks at the agency to get an email like that probably felt a little like, who is this punk?
Were you coaching them a little bit?
I might have been coaching them a little bit. Not realizing it, but I might have been. And I don't know if that's what it was. That might have just been that, that extra brick on the thing that broke it down. And they just said, well, we got to part ways. Or it could have been other performance issues that I wasn't aware of. But nonetheless, when I got called into the office for the conversation, I looked over and saw the HR person and my direct manager and said, oh, this is going to be interesting. They said, well, it's time for us to part ways. And frankly, it was really emotional. I wear my emotions on my sleeve.
How old were you?
About 25, I think.
So you're just new. I mean, getting
26.
going in your career. Yeah.
Yeah. I got emotional. I teared up, and it felt like I wasn't wanted anywhere. Right. And I just met my a girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife and the mother of my twins, Holden and McKenna, and my wife, Sarah. But anyways, I remember telling her, I'm a complete loser. I just lost my job and I don't know what to do, and I just realized that this is a time for you to look in the mirror and really understand that something went wrong. And you can't blame others. You need to look inside to see what it was that you did, and how are you going to pull yourself up from the quote-unquote bootstraps and figure out your next step. And that was challenging. It really was. Thankfully, I did have kind of a parachute, bring my dad back into the conversation. He had an agency here in town, and he allowed me to kind of work there to get resettled. Worked there for a couple of years, went to another smaller agency, and then I ended up at Moses and then GCU. But yeah, that being let go at that time was a huge point for me.
What did you learn about yourself?
I learned that I don't know anything. I knew a lot, but I didn't know anything.
So you weren't being proactive.
Wasn't being proactive.
To make yourself a stronger professional.
Yep. And I think about that a lot to this day. Geez, that's 20-something years ago now.
Yeah. Well, those moments don't leave us very quickly, if ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have those, you get punched in the nose, and you're like, oh my goodness. And you said you didn't see it coming.
No, I didn't. I didn't see it coming even after I saw this, or I want to tell you this one thing. I remember walking down the main corridor and I looked in this office and I saw my manager and another person on my team. And it just typically didn't happen that way. And I saw that and I just thought, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then the next day, it was when I received the news and I was like, oh, my boss was prepping this other person.
That was the telltale. And now it's okay. That was foreshadowing. Mm-hmm. You show a gun in Act 1, you better fire it by Act 3. That was the gun being loaded right there, huh?
Yeah. So that did teach me about proactivity in an interesting way. And that is like, maybe those thoughts and feelings I had about the approach to branding were good. But the approach that I took from a proactive standpoint was not the right approach. And if that was the reason or the impetus to make the decision this was it, the straw that was on the camel's back to part ways with Chad, I just kind of had to recalibrate like what it was that I was doing and what my position was and why I wasn't, I guess, thriving from their perspective. And I became really humbled. I think that was really important. It knocked the cockiness out of me really quickly. And I think that those moments mean so much more, almost more than successes. I think the successes only come from those types of moments where you feel like you're nothing. You feel like you've been beat down, that nobody wants you around. And then you don't have good ideas or whatever it may be, but you come back, and you prevail. And what you do with that is really what matters.
You work with a lot of young professionals now in your role. Not only those that have graduated, but you have a lot of students, don't you? You have a student agency over there.
Yeah, correct.
How, from what you learned in that time and being proactive and so forth, how do you communicate that to them? Or what do you maybe see some of the trendings now that these young professionals coming up have to really wake up to this proactiveness?
Yeah, I would say that with the students particularly, they're great. Their energy is fantastic. They look at the world from a totally different vantage point than us old crusty dudes.
They're not jaded, is what you're saying.
Yeah. And everything's kind of myopic. Everything is, yes, we can do that. Yes, we could do that. Yes, we should do that. So it's really about how do you focus them into the right area, and by showing them the proactivity. And if you have an idea, don't just share the idea and be done with it. If you have the skills to put together a proof of concept or a strategy to lead up to your idea, be proactive that way. When you talk to your supervisor about that idea and you present it in a way that is a little bit more impactful than just say, hey, Bark, I have an idea. What do you think about X, Y, and Z? Well, that's a cool idea, but okay, what are we going to do next? But if you have the proactive steps in mind, or if you've done the proactive steps, you're going to come to that conversation a little bit more prepared, a little bit more thought out. So when your supervisor asks questions or whatnot about your idea, you're going to have some solutions around. You're going to be, if they try to poke holes in it, you're going to have an answer for that and stop that.
Yeah. So you can't just rest on your laurels. You come up with a great idea, you bounce it off your friends and yourself and whatever, and like, wow, that's a great idea. I said, okay, I'm good here. But now you got to proof it out. Now you got to really dial up the energy and get into it.
Yeah. And put the legs behind it, right? Pull in the right people. If there's an area of your idea that you're just not familiar with and you've done all the Googling you can think of and you're just not getting that, in our structure, we have the student division of our agency, and we have professionals really at your disposal across all different areas of marketing. You think of an area of marketing, we have it in our department. So go talk to them. Be proactive. Go have a conversation with one of the brand strategists. Go have a conversation with an account person. Go have a conversation with a dev person back into. Well, don't do that. Just let them do what they're doing. They need to finish I'm just joking. They've got a lot of hard work to do. But go talk to the SEO manager about whoever you need to help kind of get your idea in a place that can give it some lift off. Go do that. Don't sit on your laurels and just be like, oh, maybe it's not a good idea. I'm busy and I got to go.
Or it's not my job, or it's not my department, or whatever. I mean, a lot of times we will be self-limiting in that kind of role, especially if you're working in a large organization like yours. people can say, well, I'm in account service. I'm not really in creative. And even though I've got what I think is a really great idea, that's really probably a creative thing, and maybe I shouldn't do that. I think the power comes in knocking down those barriers and go over there. You never know. You may be handing them one of the best ideas that's going to win them all kinds of awards, go in their portfolio, and land them a better job down the road. You don't know, but to get out of the silos, especially in the creative world.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The phrase "ideas can come from anywhere" is an agency cliche across all levels of agencies, but I'm sure
true.
It's super true. Like, it's not just true; it's like really true. And there's an ego thing about creative departments where only ideas really come out of the creative. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
Great idea is a great idea. If it's a great idea and you can get people to see it, the value of it, and get a rallying cry behind it, then it becomes a great idea. But great ideas come from all over the place.
What do you do, Chad? And this is one of the challenges. I was just talking with an agency up here just yesterday, as a matter of fact, and they were talking about how do you get your people on board with the GCU story? So you've done all this hard work and to find your purpose, and you've got thunder in all of us. You've got that, and so now you've got a new student group on board. You've hired maybe a couple professionals now, some new writers and whatever. What do you guys do to get them indoctrinated and embedded in that story as quickly as possible so that they understand it and they know how to talk about it and they can bring fresh ideas to it, but they're not wasting your time and spinning wheels because it's way off brand? How do you get them on brand as quickly as possible?
It's a great question. It's actually it's an ongoing battle. Maybe battle is the wrong term. It's an ongoing effort to do that. We have content going back for all the different eras of the growth. And when you look at some of the old stuff, like some of the original work that we did, does it stand up today? Well, maybe not so much, but that's okay, right? Like, but they need to hear that story. They need to understand how we arrived at Find Your Purpose and what was that research that led to that insight to make that the positioning line. And I have done and still do sessions about that. I have a whole deck that I walk people through going from origin to where we're at. It's quite exhaustive in terms of content, and I actually need to go back and kind of relook at that and make it a little bit more simple because it is a little bit exhaustive. But yeah, I think over the years we've been able to develop a lot of pieces that we use in our marketing communications that tell the story. So we have, whether it's brochures or long form videos that really kind of talk about the vision that President Mueller has put out, or whatever it is, and we provide those opportunities for our new employees to understand from a different perspective than just somebody sitting behind a desk saying, oh, so this is where it was in 2008 and here's where it is now. Obviously, brand standards and all of those things are just tools, but it's really like what's the story, what's the nuts and bolts behind the story, and getting in front of them and walking them through it, I think, is the way to do it. So we can get better at it and we can do it more often, but yeah, that's how we've been doing it for the last few years. And
all brand stories evolve. How do you keep yourself fresh and the leadership fresh and not get to be the old guys that are like, nope, this is our story, we're sticking to it, and maybe it's time to not change it wholeheartedly, but give it a little bit of a pivot or freshen it?
That's a great question. I would say that working for an organization that has a entrepreneurial leader really keeps you focused on the goals and how does that impact the brand that you're working on. So, just kind of resetting. So Grand Canyon Education is the education service providing company for the work that gets done for Grand Canyon University.
Would you call that like the holding company?
It's not necessarily a holding company. No, not at all.
Okay.
Really. They're two different businesses completely.
Okay.
Yeah. But what we do is we provide the marketing that drives interest in for prospective students to become students online or for our traditional campus. We do some enrollment services and some other educational services with curriculum and taking curriculum from a traditional delivery method and putting it and converting it to an online. So it's a pretty amazing kind of structure. Mm-hmm. Generally speaking, these education service companies are called OPMs, online program management companies. And there's many of them out there. and they all look and sound a little bit different, and we certainly do, and that's 100% based on our leader. And so to kind of go back to your question, how do we keep the brand fresh? How do we keep our storytelling fresh? Because we work for a visionary leader and an entrepreneur, we're moving fast. Ideas come, we create campaigns, and we move. And the one thing that I believe that is really interesting is that the brand that we've helped develop for GCU is it's locked in. Like it's a solid brand, but it needs to move and shake differently as time goes on. And the brand evolves through our students. I mean, they are the face of the brand. And this class for the Phoenix campus right now is unbelievable. Not to say that the previous classes haven't been. They've all been great. But this current class of students is just fantastic. And they're bringing new life. They're bringing a total different perspective to the brand. And they live and breathe it, and they love it. I mean, going back to that Thunder in All of Us campaign story that I was telling you about leaning into that insight, that core tenet of that culture, even though this is a newer group of students and they are different than the past, they're still living that. They're still bringing that. So we're connecting with people that want the thing that GCU is offering. And so when we're talking about building the brand for GCU, we have a lot of amazing assets, and that's really through the students, faculty, and staff. It's quite amazing.
Well, and you started with the culture story of someone shows up on campus and go, I've never had this experience before. It's coming from everybody, from the staff administrators to the teachers to the students themselves. Yeah. So that culture's there, and now your job is to take that culture and give it that personality and tell that story. But I guess it's really paying attention to that culture, making sure that it remains true.
Absolutely.
Which then to the story, which then keeps your story authentic and moving forward.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm surprised we made it. I don't know how far we're in on this, but authentic is like the latest, and it's not the latest and greatest, but over the last 15 years or so, authentic is the term that everybody uses in marketing.
Being vulnerable and being authentic, Chad.
Yeah. But I think what we do well and what GCU does so well is that the stories we tell are undeniably authentic. They're really unique. Every brand should and does have undeniably authentic stories. The question is, how can you uncover them and then share them? And then what vehicle do you use to share them? I think one of the things when we were working together a couple years ago that I loved, and I use it, and it is kind of a cliche term, but I loved it, and I hadn't heard it until you said it, and that was like, there's amazing stories laying around every corner. You just don't know it, but they're there.
You trip over them.
You trip over them. Yeah, you trip over them. And that's true. It's fantastic. And we did a recent testimonial campaign with one of our online students. A remarkable story. She had a really hard upbringing. She grew up with some sisters and a mother and a father, and they kind of split off, and there was some abuse, sexual abuse. Didn't really have a good upbringing. She struggled through adolescence and teens. Ended up being an adult entertainer at a strip club. And during one of her moments on stage, she had a revelation that she talks about was a divine intervention, where she felt the presence of God. And she got off stage right after that song, went into her locker at the strip club, changed, put her, whatever she had in the locker, put it in there, shut it, never went back, and really just dove headfirst into Christ. And through that process, met some friends, and one of her friends recommended Grand Canyon University to her. She didn't graduate high school. College was not a thought for her. Well, she was able to, or she might have gone to college, or at least got her high school. She at least had got her GED. Nonetheless, she goes to GCU. She finishes her undergrad in psychology in 2021. And she's close to my age. I'm in my mid-40s. And she got her bachelor's degree online at Grand Canyon University. And now she is in the master's program. And her goal is to become a doctorate of psychology. And she wants to use that skill learned from her education through Grand Canyon University to go out and help people that were like her when she was younger and help them through the struggles that they could be going through. She has a ministry right now, and she uses that ministry to go in and help other women that were on the same path at other clubs in the area of the country where she lives. And she actively, shares her story and works. She, in her platform, the way that she describes it's really special, that she doesn't say, hey, we need to get you out of this. She just is there for them with hopes that at some point they're going to have that moment to change their trajectory too. So when you hear stories like that, these are real people. These are real American people doing some amazing things and coming out of parts of our society that should have access to education and have access to growing themselves and becoming something more. And it's a great story. It was kind of lying around the corner if you call like Facebook, like a room in your house, and you like, she had posted her story and one of my colleagues found it, and I reached out to her after that, and she's amazing.
And did you tell that story?
We told that story. And as a matter of fact, like to tie it back to marketing, it was another long form testimonial, and we ran it as an ad, more for the consideration part of the funnel. And it has gotten best in class performance on virtually every platform we run it on because of the storytelling techniques that we've been able to do based on her story. Clearly her story is amazing, but how we did it was great.
True story, well told.
Yeah.
We can put a link to that in the show notes as well.
Cool. Yeah.
Now you got to send that to me.
I will.
Chad, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
I can't even think of ending on a more powerful story than that. Where can people learn more about GCU and the work you're doing over there?
Yeah, so for GCU, go to gcu.edu if you want to go back and earn an advanced degree, graduate degree, any certificate type thing, or if you're looking to get into the undergrad, go there. It's great. Lopes up. Got a great new basketball team. Went to the dance last year, first time ever. Coach Bryce Drew, killing it. Molly Miller's the new women's coach too. So anyways, and all the athletic programs at GCU are awesome. So go do that. Go check out GCU. But for what we're doing with at GCE, Grand Canyon Education, you can go to our website, gce.com. And I'm going to put a Vimeo piece together so you can see some of our work that we talked about also. And you can go there, vimeo.com/GCE ad agency. And you can check that out for some of the stuff I talked about. But thank you for having me. It's been great. And what a beautiful place you have here, Park. It's awesome.
Thank you for listening to this special edition of Deck Dialogues, coming to you from Munns Park in northern Arizona. So great to have Chad Wilson with us here today. If you liked what you heard, please share this episode with someone you know that would benefit from it. And if you haven't yet gone to iTunes and given us a rating and review, I would really appreciate it. It helps us get found out there in the loud, noisy world that we all live in. If I can be of service to you, come on over to the Business of Story, where I've got all kinds of tools, tips, techniques, and talent for you to help craft and tell compelling stories that sell. If you have yet to buy your version of the Narrative Gym for Business, you can grab your copy, Kindle or print version on Amazon. And I'm sure by now you know about the ABTs of Selling course on Thinkific. In 18 minutes, through 3 short videos with me, I'll take you through the and, but, and therefore the 3 forces of story of agreement, contradiction, consequence that you can use to hook your audience in under 15 seconds. So check it out over at businessofstory.thinkific.com. Until next week, when we will have another story artist right here for you like Chad, remember that the most potent story you'll ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. Have a great day. Take care.